Okay, yeah, Texarkana, runway 13, clear for takeoff. Exceed on course.
Students begin classes for a new program at Texarkana College.
We're going to cover manufacturing, operations, pilot careers, and maintenance careers. Mr. Don Ruggles, Colonel Don Ruggles, you've been around in Texarkana for a while, so it's like I wanted to get you on here first because you probably have the best overall experience and view of the history of Texarkana and Texarkana College in aviation. So, yeah, so why don't you start out? How did you get to flying?
Well, after finishing Henderson at Arkadelphia, I, of course, got a lieutenant's commission. So I went on active duty through the medical corps.
Oh, okay.
And I was hoping to go to med school, but didn't make a good enough grades. So I got out of the Army, and then the Berlin crisis came along in 1961, I guess it was. And so President Kennedy ordered up a lot of reserve and National Guard units, and I was in a helicopter unit in Fort Worth. So we got called back to active duty, and I went through flight school in 1961.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, it was only rotary wing. So when I got out and moved to Texarkana, I joined the Arkansas Army Guard in Little Rock, and they didn't know what to do with me because mostly they had airplanes.
Right.
So they sent me to fixed wing school. So I got dual qualified in both fixed wing and rotary wing, but mostly flew fixed wing for quite a while. And I flew on flying status for 10 years with the Guard and then 10 years with the Reserve.
Okay.
I was the state aviation officer for the Texas, for a big hospital unit. And then I commanded a unit in Houston and commanded a unit in New Iberia, Louisiana. And then I, of course, retired and quit flying. Well, I didn't quit flying, but
Quit flying with the Army.
quit flying with the Army.
Right. So let me recap on some of that. So you go to Henderson. What year did you graduate?
1958.
1958. Wow. Okay. So 1958, you graduate. You're kind of in the height of the Cold War, and you go into to a medical unit, and then you do. How long were you on active duty?
Just about 2 years.
Just about 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then reserve 20 years.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you get out. They put you in a flight unit, and then you end up going to flight school down. I guess at Fort Rucker.
Well, Mineral Wells, Texas, at
Okay.
Camp Walters
Okay.
for the primary, and then Fort Rucker for the advanced.
Okay.
And I went through the big Sikorskis.
Oh, okay. Cool. Right. Like the big
I
Choctaws.
didn't fly the little Hueys.
Oh, right. So, so what was your primary trainer? Like, what did you first start flying whenever you started
The
flying?
Hiller H-23.
Wow. Right.
And then the H-13 Bell.
Okay.
And then the H-19 Sikorsky and the H-34. And then when I started in the reserve and guard, I flew the Hueys.
Okay.
Transition in the Hueys.
Right. What was your favorite out of all those?
Honestly, I like the Sikorsky
Really?
best, yeah.
Right.
Those are fine helicopters.
Yeah. That's who makes the Black Hawk now. I mean, it kind of makes sense that
Yeah.
they're.
I never had flown the Black Hawk, but of course I like the Huey too. I think anybody can fly a Huey. It's so easy to fly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, which one was the hardest to fly out of those?
Probably the Sikorsky.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you like a challenge?
Well, it was hard to learn because it's a big helicopter.
Yes, it is. That's a pretty cool helicopter. So you go through all of that, and whenever you got into the fixed wing course, what did you start flying then?
The L-19s and L-20s.
Okay.
And then I flew the Queen Airs, King Airs, T-41s, T-42s, a little bit of everything.
I was about to say you did the gambit of like all those like 50s and 60s like Air Army aircraft.
Right,
It was pretty
right.
cool. So, like, out of your military service, like, what are you most proud of?
I guess just becoming a Army pilot.
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of people that try to do it that don't make it for sure. But yeah, so
Those schools are difficult.
right.
I mean, a lot of people wash out and never graduate.
What do you think made the difference between the people that washed out that didn't?
Well, they just don't have the knack for flying, and a lot of them don't understand weather. A lot of them are scared of weather. I got my instrument rating in both helicopters and aircraft, and nowadays, when I talk to a young pilot, 50 years ago, everybody would get a private license and then they'd go for a commercial. I don't recommend that. I recommend private and then instrument.
Right.
Because if you don't get an instrument license, you've got the propensity to get killed.
Really?
Because a person that doesn't know how to fly instruments will get himself hurt in weather.
Right.
That just recently happened to the Marine Corps out in, where was it, California?
I think so. Yeah. They've had a rash of crashes over the past couple of years.
Well, they've had 2 crashes, but recently 5 talented young men got killed in a CH-53, I guess it was. And I'm upset because you know this yourself. When you file a flight plan, someone has to authorize you to go, an operations officer or a flight officer.
Right.
And so whoever authorized that, in my opinion, ought to be held liable because it was mountainous and horrible hurricane-type weather conditions. So the helicopter disintegrated and
Right.
killed all of them.
Yeah.
And one of them was from Texarkana.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mason Andrews' grandson.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's pretty wild. Yeah. So you've got, obviously, how many hours do you have now flight?
26,000.
That's a lot of hours. So I kind of want to like do the math and figure out how many days that
But
is.
most of that is civilian time. See, I operated a helicopter company here since 1983. I had 5 Jet Rangers, a Bell 47 and a Bell J2A. And then I had 4 fixed wing. So I accumulated, about 1,000 hours a year.
Just flying things
All
around.
the time. I
Right.
flew every day.
Right. Yeah. So like I want to get to that. So like, what's your kind of path from going from military flight to civilian flight? So like you go and you get your helicopter rating, you get your fixed wing rating for the military. How did that bleed over into doing civilian work?
I worked for a large pharmaceutical company for 25 years, and excuse me.
You're right.
My son was killed while turkey hunting up in near Mena, Arkansas, and that happened in 1982. So in '83, I was traumatized with his death, and since I flew medevac in the Army, I decided we needed a medevac unit for Texarkana. So I got in contact with a friend in Colorado, and the same thing had happened to him. One of his friends died in his arms, and the helicopter never came. So he purchased a couple of helicopters and started a company called Air Methods.
Right.
And Air Methods is now the largest helicopter unit in the world. But we were the 3rd or 4th Air Methods helicopter here in Texarkana. So I went to Colorado and brought well, it was not a Jet Ranger, it was a Long Ranger.
Right.
And we brought it to Texarkana, and would you believe the very first day we got a call to go make a trip. Unfortunately, we made that trip with a neurosurgeon, Dr. Baumfault, here in Texarkana. We went out to Naples, Texas, and picked up a head injury, and we really didn't have the helicopter well equipped with medical equipment. But nevertheless, we made the first trip just as soon as we got into Texarkana, and since then we've flown probably close to 17,000 patients, and that helicopter is now in Dangerfield, and we have a new one here for LifeNet.
Oh, wow.
So I left that company and decided to start my own helicopter unit. So I bought a Bell 47 and got a contract with SWEPCO, the electrical company, plus some REAs, and started flying, and over the years needed more and more aircraft, so I ended up buying a Jet Ranger, and then another Jet Ranger, and another Jet Ranger.
You got a Jet Ranger problem.
We started building up a fleet of helicopters.
Right.
And we had big business there with aircraft.
Yeah, right.
We flew the power lines to with video cameras on the nose of each helicopter.
Yeah.
And that video camera would pick up brush, broken insulators, broken poles, anything wrong, and they would watch the video and then go out and
fix the. Yeah, so I actually have a couple of stories. One of them, like I remember off of Mosley Road in Tennessee. That's where my mom lived.
Where?
Mosley Road in Tennessee, South Mosley and Tennessee Road.
Yeah, here in town.
Yeah, right. And there's a high line that runs down that road, and I can remember you flying over.
Yeah, we flew that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was probably 14 or 15. I heard a helicopter, so I came out. And I was like, where's that? Next
that
thing
was
I know,
me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and there it is. You know, that was something else. Yeah. So like, what was your son's name that passed away?
Tony Ruggles.
Tony Ruggles.
He was only 21, student at the University of Arkansas.
Right.
And unfortunately, his friend heard some noise in the brush, and he shot at the noise and killed Tony.
Right. So at the time, you're flying for a pharmaceutical company.
No, I didn't fly. I was a drug rep.
Oh, okay. So
calls on
right
doctors, and
I guess you make the like determination that like that Tony had an air ambulance, they probably could have saved him.
Well, that's what I was in. I commanded air ambulance units.
Right. So, and then you call your buddy up that had started Air Methods.
Right.
Is that right? So, fun fact on that: whenever I came back from Afghanistan, a lot of the guys that I served with, they all got out of the Army and they all went to go work. And it's all, we flew OH-58s, so we flew Jet Rangers.
I flew those in the Army too.
Right. Yeah, they and so like Air Methods primarily flies your Bell 407s and stuff like that, and so that's where they went. And so like I actually have a lot of friends that actually work for Air Methods at different places all over the country. Yeah, it's kind of wild.
They're a fine company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you call him up, you say like, hey, look, what's your story? He says like very similar experience, and so what was it like getting the first helicopter? Like what like relive that memory for us. So.
Well, the administrator of St. Michael and I flew up to Colorado, and of course they wanted to check me out and make sure I could fly a helicopter. Right. So I got checked out, and Roy and Tom and I flew the helicopter back here to Texarkana, and we didn't have a place to put it, so we just parked it here at the local airport, and I set up an office in St. Michael Hospital so we could receive phone calls.
Right.
And we received that phone call that very first day from Naples, Texas. And so we flew that, let's see, it was called an L model, what were the L1s or L?
I believe so. L1, L3 is one of the two.
It was an L1, I believe.
Right.
And then we later got an L3. And then we got the 222, which was way too expensive.
Yeah, that's a nice aircraft.
They're twin engines.
Yeah.
And we couldn't afford the 222. So we started getting 407s.
Wow.
And 407's an awesome helicopter.
Right. Yeah, it's a time proven for sure.
It'll go straight up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so so what was it? So like you land, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go to my office at the hospital, and then immediately they call you, and it's just like you're like one man against everything.
One man operation.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Right. So what was it like getting that first phone call?
It really kind of surprised me. We really didn't know what to do. We weren't equipped. I don't think we even had the stethoscope.
Right.
And but I called Dr. Baumfalk, and he said he'd go with us. So we went out to the hospital, and he examined the patient, but the patient was unconscious. So we loaded him in the helicopter and brought him to St. Michael.
Did you have like a stretcher or anything, or did you just like, it was literally just like giving somebody a...
Oh no, it was
ride?
well equipped with a stretcher.
Okay, all right.
But and that young man lived till just a few years ago. He's passed away now, but would you believe that was 40 years ago?
Yeah. So
he died in his 60s, I guess.
So was it like knowing that, like, on your first day on the job at what would become LifeNet, like you gave somebody 40 years of life?
What now?
So, like, what's it like now knowing that, like, your first day on the job, you get this unexpected phone call and you fly out there and you give somebody like another 40 years of time on this earth, you know?
Well, I don't know how many times I've run into people, and a lot of times didn't even recognize them, and they'll say, Mr. Ruggles, you saved my life. And that's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Prissy Hickerson here in town, who used to be our representative, and she was flown to Little Rock, and she credits our LifeNet for saving her life. Chad Rainey credits LifeNet for saving his life. Several, and so it's a nice feeling to know that I don't know what our percentages are on the 17,000 we've flown. Probably I'm gonna say it's well over 60% savings. Of course, you're dealing with the worst
cases, right?
Cases.
There's a reason why you call a helicopter in, right?
Well, a lot of people think that the reason you call a helicopter in is to rush out, scoop them up, take them to the hospital, but that's not the case. The helicopter moves essentially a hospital to the patient, stabilizes the patient while on the ground, and then transports them. So a lot of, even today, people don't understand that, but you've got to stabilize the patient where they are.
Right.
And we do that through advanced paramedics. In fact, all of our nurses are also paramedics. They have an RN degree and a paramedics license.
That's pretty
so
wild.
that's really fortunate.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. That's actually like kind of that flips the mental model around a lot.
Well, when we were in the Army, we just strictly had a paramedic.
Right.
We didn't have a RN. And now we've got RNs. In fact, they're not 2-year RNs, they're 4-year RNs plus having a paramedics qualification. Sometimes we even have a physician on board.
That's pretty cool. So, like, over the years, like, how did LifeNet grow? Like, so, like, it's just you. I
don't know how it grew so rapidly, but we have a unit in Hot Springs. We have a unit in, I think, Longview and Tyler. We have a unit in, I believe, Fort Smith. And now we have units all over the world. We have, I think close to 400 helicopters.
That's a lot of helicopters.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, you do have a Jet Ranger problem. Yeah. So, how long did LifeNet go before you started Helicopter Southwest and started flying there?
Let's see, we started LifeNet in '83, and only about a year later I started
Okay.
my company. We called it Helicopter Southwest, and I did that for a reason. When someone looks in the telephone book or computer, you type in the word helicopter, so I named it Helicopter Southwest.
So you'd be really close
so
to the top.
people would know it.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we got the business of SWEPCO,
Yeah.
Bowie Cass, the REA out here on 82, Mena, Arkansas. Let's see where else. Quitman, Texas. We flew for about 5 REAs plus SWEPCO plus PSO in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
So we had big business.
Yeah.
We had more than I can handle. So I hired the pilots that fly for LifeNet. They also flew part-time for me
Oh,
on the
right.
power lines.
So you simultaneously, you got two businesses
I
going.
wouldn't hire anybody unless they were an Army aviator.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess there's a certain expectation and standard that comes with being an Army aviator.
Oh, absolutely, because like myself, most Army aviators are truly taught emergency standards. If an engine quits or problem with a helicopter, they know how to auto-rotate, and I've auto-rotated myself 4 or 5 times.
Right. Is it a scary feeling the first time?
I hate to admit it, but a couple of times I ran out of fuel.
Well, 26,000 hours is bound to happen at some point. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, as you're doing this, my understanding is that Texarkana College had its own flight training program. Is that correct?
When I moved here in '62, Larry and Jim Spears and there were 3 or 4 instructors. They started the program right over here by TAC, now Signature.
Right.
There's a little small building there. I think it's not there anymore, I don't believe. But it was called TC Flight Training, and they had an excellent program. They taught ground school and flight school. I believe they operated Cessna 150s and Cessna 172s, but I'm not sure about that. I can't remember. And so I supported them, and in fact, I flew with them.
Oh,
some.
yeah.
And they produced many fine pilots.
Right. So, you have Larry and Jim Spears,
Jim Spears.
that are starting it up.
I don't remember who the others were.
I think there's a handful of them. I know Jim Spears, and we'll actually have him
Jim
on.
is still here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's coming by tomorrow. We're gonna have a conversation about what that looked like for him. But from the outside looking in, so you're
Jim was one of my Boy Scouts.
Oh, really?
So I talked him into going to flight school.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, you're kind of like a grandfather figure for TC Aviation. If you talk Jim into it, then Jim goes and instructs some of TC's first students, and now we're at this point. So
I taught John Buchanan was a friend of my son, graduated with him, and I talked him into going to flight school. So he's an Army aviator.
right.
And several.
Right. So you said that it was a good program. They flew Cessna 152s, 172s. What else do you remember from TC back in the day? Well, was there anything
Well,
interesting that
we
happened?
didn't have any aviation flights. Ground school.
Right.
So I recommended all the students also take their ground school. And in fact, I helped teach some of it.
Right.
And it was an excellent program. And we also try to influence them to get an instrument rating.
Right.
Like I said before, that saves lives.
Right. Yeah. So, looking back on all your years of experience and stuff, you said like the instrument rating really is like a life-saving certification to have. What else would you like? Would you say 26,000 hours? That's a lot of experience. Like if you were to talk to somebody who had no flight time whatsoever and they were just starting, what would you tell them?
They need to experience bad weather. I've flown many times when it was almost 0-0, and I probably shouldn't have. But if you fly in bad weather conditions, then it teaches you how to handle it. A young pilot that's never flown in bad weather can jeopardize himself. And so, back in those days, we did not have maintenance.
Right.
We strictly had flight training and ground school. Later on, we also had twin engine training. I think we used a Comanche. I'm not sure what it was. No, maybe a 310. But we trained a lot of pilots for Texarkana, and I hope we can do that in the future.
Yeah, but that's the hope, that pilots and mechanics both are really kind of like put a dent in the.
Well, we didn't train mechanics.
Well, yeah, they'll be like, well, we will now. Right. So, yeah.
And we had Southern State College or SAU here for many years, and they trained quite a few A&P pilots. And I guess, are y'all going to try to train an IA?
So we will eventually. It's a little bit. So that with the IA, all you're really doing is taking a test. Like the FAA is validating that you've had your A&P for so long, and a couple other things.
Well, but you got to have experience too.
Right, you did like those 2 or 3 years, and like we can't really, like, I guess we could employ an A&P for 2 or 3 years and then like put them up for the RIA. But it's really kind of just comes down to a written test and how long you've had your A&P, and if they can locate you on the airfield. It's really kind of the 3 big requirements.
Did they have to have so many years of A&P before they get an IA?
I believe it's 3. It's either 2 or 3. But typically, most of the people, what they'll do is they'll go to like an intensive course to prep them for the written exam. And once they've gone to the FSDO and they've gotten their like, I don't think it's an 86.
But here in this area, we have very few. In fact, I can't think of but 1 or 2 IAs.
Yeah, there's we have
Dean Overholt,
right,
and Justin Lee.
Yep.
And I can't think of any other.
The only other one is maybe Rudy at LifeNet. I don't know if Rudy's an IA or not. I would imagine that he is.
Yeah.
So like that's going to be a requirement for our instructors.
Well, we probably have one with Signature or TAC Air, don't we?
I don't think Signature has any maintenance. Not here on the field. They might have it somewhere else. But
and that's another thing. We had maintenance here on this airport. For years and years through David Leslie and Mr. May, Tommy May, and now we practically have none.
Yeah, right.
That's a shame.
It is. And Tommy's over in Mount Pleasant now, and then David Leslie passed, and so
he passed away.
Yeah. Because I remember David Leslie taught me whenever I came through the SAU Tech program.
David was a sharp mechanic.
Very smart dude. He one of the things I remember the most from him actually has very little to do with the maintenance side of aviation, everything to do with the business side of aviation. Because I remember he did an annual on the King Air, and what he profited off of that, he went out and bought a Plymouth Voyager. Because all of us kids were making fun of him for driving this van, and he was just like, "Well, it's paid for." So it's kind of crazy to think about it.
Yeah.
So, but you've been quite an entrepreneur yourself. I don't know that I really had wrapped my head around.
Well,
that.
we made well with our helicopters and aircraft.
Right.
We didn't fly the power lines much with fixed wing, but occasionally we would if we were in a big hurry. But you just cannot see the power line problems with a fixed wing as well as you can a helicopter.
Right. You can't get it slow and as low.
Plus we were taking video.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and then you did other things. Like I remember I showed you that picture of Beach Street First Baptist Church, and you had taken it. So,
we took a picture of the Shreveport Church, Beach Street, several, And so we, in addition to the power line work, sometimes big farming operations would have us video their farmland, and they would determine what needed to be done on the farmland. And so they would watch the video, and then we did some forestry work, the trees.
Right.
Pipeline, we did pipelines.
All kinds of stuff, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Oh, I hate to admit this, but we flew several years for the DEA on marijuana.
Oh, really?
I have found millions of marijuana plants.
I'll tell you a funny story on that. When I was like 16 years old, we were out in the training area flying, the Texarkana Flying Club's old Cherokee, right? And I remember like me and Troy Ballard. Do you know Troy Ballard?
His name sounds familiar.
He was a flight instructor out there. He was a Texarkana, Arkansas police officer. Now I think he flies for Falcon Jet or something like that. Anyways, but so like we were flying, and I looked down, like there's a clearing in the trees and a very square like a fruit plot. Well, no, I looked down. I was like, Troy, I think that's marijuana. And he was like, so we put it in slow flight and got it like right on top of the trees. And he looked over and was like, yeah, sure enough. Well, when we landed, we didn't think really that much about it. It was just kind of interesting that we found it. The Army had their drug interdiction team that was there, and I was like, hey, what are y'all doing? And they're like, oh, we're out looking for weed. I was like, well, let me take out your section. I'll tell you right where one's at. So
the National Guard started doing that after we did it. We did it for probably 8 or 10 years, and then the Army started the program. They also started a program called MAST.
Okay.
Military Assistance to Safety and Traffic.
Okay.
And they had it set up all over the United States with Huey helicopters. And so once we started the civilian hospital ships, the military dropped theirs.
Oh, okay. There you go. I didn't know that they did that. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, they did it for about 5 or 6 years or longer.
Right.
I was one of the my helicopter units in Houston and New Iberia were massed units, and we didn't fly very many missions, but we flew a few.
Right.
I flew a lot of Vietnam veterans that were sick and injured, because that's when I was in the Army during Vietnam, and I flew a lot of them into what's called Brooke Army Medical Center
I know about Brooke,
in San Antonio.
Yeah. So like especially with Helicopter Southwest, you're doing all these different types of things for different people.
Right.
Is that something that you went after? Did you cultivate that, or did people just come to you and be like, hey, can you fly over and look at this?
I pretty much cultivated myself.
Oh, really? Right. So you're always just thinking about like, what's another like kind of like line of business we can count?
I'm probably one of the first electrical company operators in the United States. And now there's a bunch.
But they're all over the place here. Right. Well, yeah,
most of them fly Jet Rangers.
Right.
Or the old OH-58s.
Right.
There are a lot of people operate OH-58s commercially. Mm-hmm. And it's legal, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, so the Army divested from them, let's see, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was a big deal for all of us because we were all, Kyle Warrior, guys. And I remember in Iraq in 2008, we were having problems with we would take a round of the tail. And so with the tail, it's like one big empennage just come off, right? And we would put it back on. There was only so many of them left. And the tooling, because it was such an old helicopter, the tooling didn't exist anymore to build the new ones. And so the Army was like, okay, well, we either have to spend a lot of money to revamp this thing to keep this 58, or we have to get a new helicopter. And so I think it was like yesterday they announced that the Armed Scout helicopter program got canceled for the second time, because we thought they were gonna get us 407s with a nose-mounted sight and all the good stuff, and then they just keep on.
The Army decided just 2 weeks ago, I believe, that the drone capability of adversaries are knocking down a lot of our helicopters.
Yeah.
So they've developed a philosophy now that helicopters, especially Chinooks and the large commercial helicopters, they'll still be used in warfare, but they're not going to go up front like we did with the Cobras.
Right.
And that's because we're losing too many.
Yeah.
The drones are, well, it's a new kind of warfare.
It is, 100%.
And, you know, they're hurting us.
Yeah, I did a video for our brigade on like the drone capabilities that we saw in Ukraine, and it really is something totally
dangerous.
different, right? Yeah, so the drones don't fit very well. They're not, because they're not really aircraft. They don't have like the logistics train, the training requirements.
Oh, but you can afford to lose one of those.
Right,
They're cheap.
Yeah.
And yet they're effective.
Very.
We have an OH-58 here in town. Carl Anderson flies it. I used to fly. In fact, I went and got it at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Oh, really?
Or Texarkana.
Well, there you go. Well, I bet like that helicopter has a soft spot in my heart because it's been many. I became a mechanic on OH-58s. Like I really learned a lot about them doing that. But yeah, but we're rolling up on an hour. I don't want to keep you for too long, but I really appreciate you coming by and telling us all this.
Well, I just hope Texarkana College can put this together. It's going to take a while. You can't do it rapidly.
Right.
And I hope that we will, other than just high school and college students, will also allow adults.
Yeah, right.
Are you going to do that?
Yes, sir. Like that's the plan is to start with the 61 training for flight,
Right.
and just whoever shows up is who will train. I don't care if they're 16 or 61. It doesn't matter.
We won't be 141.
Not yet. So we'll progress into that, but we'll probably never lose our 61 training. So we might have like 141 classes, people that want to go to the airlines, but we'll have 61 available for the general public.
And you know, Henderson at Arkadelphia has a flight program.
Right.
And it's kind of been up and down, but
right.
I support it as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's aviation's. I have a friend of mine that will call it. They'll say aviation's a cruel mistress. It's just like you fall in love with it, and it just like will use you and abuse you for years and years and years with the ebbs and flows for sure.
I recommend RO. For example, a person can go to college and take ROTC and the aviation program, and when they graduate after 4 years, they'd have a FAA license plus a lieutenant's commission, and that's a ticket for success.
100%. Yeah,
It really is.
Yeah. Like
and most high school seniors just don't realize that.
that's true. That's something that I've run into. So like this afternoon, I'll go out to Fouch Career Day, and a lot of these guys, they think they see like Leadwell and stuff. They think welding, and they think that's what's available, and they just don't think about aviation. They have no concept of what's possible out there. And so, but when you get to talking to them, you're like, kind of tell them about what they could do. They get really, really interested in it. So I think a big part of our mission is really to educate the general public on what you can do with aviation. Right. So,
and I've got a lot of friends that are lawyers, but everybody thinks, well, I should be a doctor or a lawyer. Well, you can make a good living as an aviation man, not necessarily be a doctor or lawyer.
right.
I always kid my friends, all my fraternity brothers in college made physicians and attorneys, pharmacists, nurses. And I always kid them and say, I was a failure, I made a soldier.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's kind of the way I've kind of come to view myself.
You were a failure too.
Yeah,
you made a soldier.
Yeah, we just got to do what you do. But I'll tell you what, though, like there's something to that. I don't know if it's just like the type of person that joins the military or does the military make them, but like, I mean, you've been very entrepreneurial ever since then. So yeah, you started off in the Army, but like, man, like you really kind of like cultivated a lot of different businesses.
Well, when you go in the military, I even applied for, what's it called, RA, regular Army. I got it, but I turned it down, and I often wonder, where I'd be. Well, I'd still be a retired officer, but the entrepreneurship, I think, is better than being regular Army.
Yeah, I agree.
You can make more money.
Yeah, you definitely can. That's for sure. There's a, Lord Nelson, Battle of Trafalgar with Napoleon. He had a saying that he wanted his the ship commanders. He's an admiral. He has different ship commanders. He said he wanted them to be entrepreneurs of battle. And I heard Stanley McChrystal quote him. He said he wanted all his commanders to be entrepreneurs of battle. Always go out and find a fight. And that really stuck with me. And when I sit back and look at, we had an issue that came up the other day, and I started calling around these different guys. All of them are all like either retired or they got medicaled out of the military. They're all military officers. And that entrepreneur type mindset of just like, we'll just figure it out. Like there's a way forward, we just have to find it. Whereas people that are kind of outside of that realm, they hit a wall and they're just like, it is what it is, and they just kind of quit, And it's something that like you definitely can see it in your history. It's just like, we have a problem, let's try to figure out how to solve it, It's kind of interesting.
Well, I wish y'all well. I think we can do well.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of interest out there. I'll tell you that. And so
we're going to try to start in September, right?
the hope is for 147 training, so the A&P side of it will start in September. I'm hoping that with the next follow-on year, we can cultivate that and then start putting in flight.
What about flight training?
So flight training would be
A year later
or so. Now, flight training is a little bit easier because the 147 training, you have to get approval from the FAA, you have to have all this equipment, you have to have like instructors, you have to have all this stuff. With 61 flight training, all
and
really
ground
need,
school too?
Right, yes sir. Yeah, so all we really need is a CFI and an airplane, and we're off to the races. So it's like we only really need two things to get going. So it's actually a little bit, ironically, it's harder to become a mechanic or start a mechanic school than it is to start flight school. So
well, we need a helicopter CFI besides myself.
Yeah, right. So, well, I
don't know a single one around here.
Yeah, it's.
I think I'm the only one.
Maybe. It's hard to get into rotary wing just because now there's so much turbine time that it's just expensive.
Right.
So, but we'll get there. It's just
Just takes time.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We'll be entrepreneurs of battle there as well. Just slowly one thing after the other. Anyways, but yeah, so is there any parting advice you'd leave for us going forward with all this?
Is what now?
You have any parting advice that you would leave for us? What do we need to know to be successful?
Well, can the college go out and recruit some contributions?
Oh, absolutely, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you need some contributions, both in monetary as well as equipment. And you need some advisors like myself. You need some flight instructors. You need a lot of support.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a team sport for sure.
Right.
So it's not just one man against the world.
Hopefully the airport will be supportive.
Mm-hmm. They've been very, very helpful. Up to this point. So for sure.
Right.
Yeah, we're real lucky. I actually had a friend of mine come from, he works on the 87 program at Boeing out here to help me move stuff around. And he was just I remember taking him over to the terminal to get on the flight and go back home. And he was just he's like, man, you're super lucky to have so many people in the community that's so, behind this. Because there's little things that you don't think about that,
I wonder is Larry still alive?
Larry Spears?
No, Larry, he started the program. He and Jim Spears.
Oh, yeah. Larry Gordon?
Larry Gordon,
yeah. I don't think he is. I could be wrong.
If he was still alive, he'd be a good
right.
supporter.
Right.
But Jim Spears is still alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jim will actually be here tomorrow. Yeah,
okay.
So we're going to do one of these with Jim to kind of lessons learned and what's the history of TC.
Okay.
So, but there you go. All right. Well, Colonel Ruggles, thanks so much for coming by today.
Glad to do it.
Super happy we'll have you out again. We'll be forming our advisory
board. I'm
boards.
going to try to get y'all a helicopter.
Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah, it'd be super helpful because that's the one thing we don't have. Right. And like we said, they're expensive.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely. All right. Very good.
I'm ready.